peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Viewers, good morning. This morning, I want to address the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. The legacy of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya keeps on moving, keeps on going forward and forward. Since the handshake in 2018, that brought about the peace, the tranquility, the unity of purpose, President Uhuru's star has been rising. All over Africa, people are thinking of using the model that Kenya used to stop any form of violence, chaos on the streets after elections. As you know, all of you are aware that elections in Africa produce two things: after or before or after the voting. Disputed elections, winner takes it all, loser doesn't accept the results. But the Kenyan model takes us miles and miles away from the normal type of democracy. The democracy, a negotiated format, a consensus format. A democracy that gives consensus a chance. A democracy that talks about the future of a country, the unity of a country, as opposed to a fragmented country, polarized country, where most African countries find themselves in. We have seen in the last 10 years or so, most of the elections in Africa have been contested by the opposition. Very few people in Africa, countries in Africa, where opposition has conceded defeat and come up to congratulate the winner. We have seen the South African model has worked very well. The Ghanaian model has worked so well. I don't see any other country in Africa where the models have worked well. I thought it would be Sierra Leone, but today we see Sierra Leone going back to the same ethnic tensions, as you can see from the reports that are circulating in the international media and the local media. So elections in Africa are contentious issues. They create a contentious position, create a departing point for the people of Africa, of that particular nation. The legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta, therefore, will be remembered for having brought the tranquility that we have today, the peace, the new format, the new tool of having a better organized civil Africa, an Africa without violence, an Africa without chaos after elections, when the opposition accepts to work for the interests of a nation, not personal interests. This has worked in Kenya, and thank you very much, Your Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, for the tenacity and the steadfastness that you have guided this handshake up to today. For those who want to mutilate the handshake, belittle the handshake. One lesson they should learn is to look at Libya. Libya was once a territory we all respected. It is no more. Let's keep the handshake and the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Thank you.
We must give ourselves a different political template if we are truly to prosper and not be dragged down every single day by never-ending squabbles. Every so often, I believe, a nation must come together. We in Kenya have done so in Lancaster in the 1960s, leading to the Lancaster Consensus. We did so in the 80s, leading to the removal of Section 2A. We also did the same in 2008. And I believe it is time now also for a new consensus. And this is the aim and objective of the BBI process. In this process of renegotiation, no voice will be wrong, and all must be heard. The process must be inclusive, and it should spell, fellow Kenyans, an end of ethnic majoritarianism, and I believe an end to the winner-take-all politics. Fellow Kenyans, we are on a path, I believe, to end the cycle of election crises, and that is the only way we can win our battle of economic prosperity. And I want to assure all Kenyans, for me, I am not against any single person, but I am for 47 million Kenyans to take the next step forward.
It is just a few minutes past 11 a.m. and the show is Good Morning Africa. This station, as usual, is Punchline Africa TV, and we are coming to you from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. A bright and sunny Monday here, and we thank God for the good weather. I hope your weekend was fantastic. Now let's just get back to the business of talking about Africa, and of course the first hour of the show, Good Morning Africa, we shall look at the news-making headlines in Kenya here. Charity, as always, begins at home, so it's important for us to look at the Kenyan newspapers, as we always do. Even as we try to look at President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy, it is important, as I have mentioned there earlier time and time again, for us to be up to date on what the president is doing, not because of any other reason, but because Kenyans really want to know what President Uhuru Kenyatta and his administration are up to. The things that he's doing, is he changing the lives of Kenyans? Are there things that he's doing that perhaps Kenyans would want changed? And if at all President Uhuru Kenyatta has to realize his legacy here, which he has anchored in the Big Four agenda, and we have seen him, it is crunch time for him. It's just less than 2.5 years to go. President Uhuru Kenyatta has a lot of work to do and must deliver in case he wants to secure his legacy here in Kenya as the fourth President of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you so much. My name is Miriam Agutu, and it is a pleasure to have you here this morning. And now, as we look at, of course, the headlines on the newspapers this morning, a lot of things happened over the weekend in regards to that rally that was at Narok. And some sentiments were said there that did not augur well, especially in regards to the BBI, which is one of the things that President Uhuru Kenyatta, together with Raila Odinga, thought could bring Kenyans together. They sat down and they deliberated and they thought, what could be? It is not the only way that can bring peace, but there had to be a way and a channel and a process. And so this BBI was formed to ensure that Kenyans, the problem that plagues Kenyans, the hatred, the ethnicity, the negative ethnicity, the corruption, and a lot of these other things that plague Kenyans and that usually cause a lot of chaos during our electioneering period is able to be taken care of. And so the sentiments that were being that one of the leaders that was present in that BBI rally in Narok was not personally, and also an interview that he had done previously at a local radio station, a television station, did not augur very well with the Kenyan public. And so right now, as it is, I think that a BBI report or BBI process was a very noble idea when President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga sat down and thought about it, and after the handshake. But as we see the way things continue to unfold, this process has been hijacked by politics. Politicians have really diverted the BBI from the focus, from the main thing that was supposed to achieve, and now we've seen politics has come into play. And it's very interesting when you're watching this rally. It started well, and so even Kenyans who were of goodwill, who were in support of this BBI, who others were not really decided, but really wanted to hear more of what BBI has to offer and what BBI, in what ways BBI was going to change their lives. There are Kenyans who are still not really decided, and they're still waiting to see. Let me go attend this rally and hear what this BBI is all about. Let me hear what our leaders are going to talk about, and then you show up there, and one of the leaders is there spewing, words that are not acceptable in Kenyan setting today, owing to our history and owing to how negative ethnicity has really been a cancer that has refused for some, communities, even who live in the borders or even doing businesses, and also has been a huge factor when it comes to our elections and has contributed to the chaos. And so at this point, those comments were not necessary. The comments that were done there, that were made there from Narok Senator, Mr. Oledam. Let me just get... if I can get that, was not okay, was not acceptable. And even as we speak, Olekina yesterday I think was summoned by the DCI, but I'm told earlier this morning, I think from let me just read to you one of the messages. I don't know if it has been verified, but the Directorate of Criminal Investigations had summoned Narok Senator Ledama Olekina over utterances he made when he appeared on JKL Live on Citizen TV on Wednesday, February 19th. And but this morning, I think a message was sent to him. It said, "Good evening." Yesterday, good evening, Mheshimiwa. Due to unforeseen circumstance, please don't report to the DCI office in Narok tomorrow morning. As earlier agreed, I will communicate the new date when you will present yourself. I regret the inconvenience caused. I don't know. I'm just looking at the spelling of even this text and even how, I don't know, maybe I'm just a communication student, so sometimes you notice even things that... really, but that text has not been verified. But yesterday, what was the information was Mr. Olekina had been summoned to the office of the DCI in Narok County there to record statements over his utterances that he had made on JKL Live on Wednesday, and also I think we heard it being echoed during the rally at Narok there on Saturday. And so the senator said that the meeting will only address issues affecting the entire Mak community, and also there's something he said in reference to people who are not from the Maasai community, not supposed to be elected there or something like that, and that goes against the spirit of our constitution. That goes against the spirit of the BBI. this report, let me just look at one of the lines there, one of the chapters there that is really very paramount and is the core of this BBI, and that is to have an inclusive Kenya. And to have an inclusive Kenya, for us to achieve this, then Kenyans should feel free to operate from any part of this country. Kenyans should feel free to go buy land from any part of this country. Kenyans should feel free to have their businesses, to have investments, to move freely, to move, go work. Like right now in Northeastern province, there is a problem there, and the education sector has greatly been affected, and because the non-locals there had to be removed and had to be transferred, but that is because of the insecurity that is posed by Al-Shabaab that goes to target the teachers and other civil servants that go there that are non-locals from that part of the country. So that is not because we even saw the leaders there from the northeastern part of the country saying, no, this cannot happen, and we need Kenyans from other tribes from other ethnical background, because we need them to come here, because from statistics, a northeastern part of the country is not many people are as educated. It is just right now that we've seen even an increase in education and school enrollment, but it never used to be like that, and you've seen they've been lagging behind in terms of development. So Kenyans from other parts of the country, when they go in there, their contribution is highly appreciated, and it is in also other parts of the country. So there's no any part of this country that can live in isolation, thinking they don't need the rest of Kenyans to come and help in and come in with their different skills and just come in and mingle. We have 42 plus tribes here in this country, and so we have to be very, very careful, especially to our leaders when they go out there and they address these meetings. They must weigh their words and understand that their words have a lot of power. And when he was standing there, he is a leader of the Maasai community. So when Maasais were watching and hearing, and a lot of them have turned out, and other tribes also that live within Narok County had come to attend this rally, who wanted to learn about BBI, who want to hear about BBI, who perhaps had not even made their minds, but they were coming in the hopes that perhaps it will be explained to them for them to have a better understanding, and so that they decide, do I want to join to support this BBI? Can somebody explain to me what this BBI? But we saw what really happened there, and even from that conversation that Olekina had on Citizen Television, I think our leaders must start to realize that they must be careful. They must really, really be careful and mind the words that are coming out of their mouth. Because when you start saying that non-locals cannot leave, I don't know any place in Kenya where it is just that community that resides there. I don't know, because Kenya is a cosmopolitan country, and it's a multicultural country. And Kenyans, since time immemorial, have been moving and interacting with the different communities. And there are Kenyans who prefer living in other parts of the country for whatever reason. And if you've gone there and acquired a land and you've paid for it, it's a willing buyer, willing seller, and you've not stolen. You've not coerced those people. It was, you agreed. You said, I'm looking for a land. Narok has I want a land from Narok, maybe because I want to plant sorghum or pyrethrum or whatever it is that does well in that climate, or I just want to go resettle there. If you find somebody, a Maasai or somebody from that community that is willing to sell you that land, I don't think anybody should bar you from doing that, as long as you're Kenyan and as long as you followed the right process. So we must discourage, and this kind of utterances should not be acceptable, should not be given space, should not be given airtime, because it is things like this that brought this country to its knees in 2007, and the people who have still not healed from the chaos that happened here in 2007, in 2008 post-election violence. There are Kenyans whose homes were burnt because they were residing in an area where was not historically they did not come from there, but they went there, they found themselves there either by buying land, or they were, I remember, if you look at after Kenya was handed its independence, and the white people had taken the land the way they've done in South Africa, except for ours who were able to get a few. Unfortunately, the leaders who were there at that time did not return these lands to the people who initially the white settlers had taken this land from, and that is just one of the truths and one of the things that even as we talk about this problem and where some of this hatred and some of these displacements, it started back then. And so some people found themselves in different parts of this country, and they've grown there. They date back 4-5 generations away. So this person has been here, all their life has been here. They've built their life here. Perhaps they've started their business, they've bought more land. This is all they have. This is their home. So 50 years later, you can't come and tell this person who was born here that now because we don't speak the same language, now because we're not in the same political affiliation, that now we don't need you here. Now you're not Kenyan enough. Now we don't want you around. And we see there are people who are very affected by this. Unfortunate kind of thinking, and that really when you see sentiments being spewed like this from the politicians, there are people out there who don't know any better and take these things very seriously. When they hear their leader utter these things, they actually take them literally, and they say, you know what, perhaps I don't need that person, perhaps I should get my land, not forgetting that land, they sold it legally. That person did not steal it from them. That person did not force them into giving them that land. It was purchased, and it is in a legal way, and things like that. So we have to be very careful. Even this, otherwise, even this process of the BBI will be futile, because when you look at some of the things that the BBI is set to address, and I think we looked at one of them, chapter 1. We've looked at chapter 1 and chapter 2. And chapter 1, the notable issues that the BBI seeks to address: a nation of ideals versus a nation of blood ties. And then number 2, young people feel left out. And then number 3, Kenyans running out of time, and we must bake a bigger national cake. That is number 4 input in chapter 1. And then number 5, Kenyans are insensitive to all of that. And then we come to number 2, which is the ethos, national ethos. And then number 3, responsibilities and the rights of citizenship. And then we go to chapter 4. Let me just read this. So these are the things that our leaders are supposed to be sitting there and discussing, not that ethnicity nonsense that we saw happening with some of the leaders. Not all of them, but a few of them who are really, if they continue in that manner, even the Kenyans who was supporting this BBI, it's a turn-off. Personally, I think they should change. And I think President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the architect of the BBI together with Mr. Raila Odinga, needs to go back to the drawing board and make sure that everybody comes on board and understand a BBI process is not a political process. I understand politicians are the ones who are the driving force behind it, and they have to go around the country and do the rallies and talk to the people and try to enlighten the people. But from what we've been seeing, there's not too much enlightenment. I've not heard them mention some of these issues that came up, and so they have been so off course that it is very difficult for a normal Kenya to just go there and understand. So chapter 4 of this BBI, as it was proposed and presented by the task force, and they're still working on it. I think they're still working on it. But let me just read that chapter 4 on ethnic antagonism and competition, so that our leaders, even as they continue going there, drumming up support for this BBI, they have to understand, and it must be anchored on these things. These are opinion from Kenyans. When this BBI committee was walking around and picking opinion, these are the reflection of Kenyans and what they wanted looked at. So they should not go out of the way. And should any other tribe or any other place in this country feel their views or some of their pressing issues were not reflected in this copy, in this draft, because it's not really final yet, then there should be a proper way of saying it. If you feel there are people who perhaps come there and perhaps take advantage of, say, the masses, who a lot of them are not maybe very educated and very enlightened, and so perhaps people go there and take advantage of their ignorance and maybe do business in dubious ways, then there should be ways to safeguard that, but not in a way that now you try to paint the other people as if they are the problem. If you feel there are issues that affect your people that was not captured here and you feel it's very important, don't come there with a point. And I also fault the whole team and the organizers of these rallies. Before a leader comes there to give their speech or to make their points or declaration or whatever it is, I think those points needs to be vetted and see, do they meet the criteria? Are they in tandem or the purpose of what the PBI is all about? Do they capture? Are they reflective of what really it should be contained in the BBI? You just don't let somebody come there and talk about things that are completely out of line. The organizers of these meetings right now, I think we've seen it a few times. The few rallies that we've been seeing going on across the country, they need to get a hold of this process. They need to make sure they vet every person that is coming there to speak and let them understand. This is not a political rally. This is not a NASA rally. This is not an ODM rally. This is not a Baba thing. It is, I understand Baba is very important as far as the BBI report is concerned, because him and President Uhuru Kenyatta are the architects of this process. But it is not entirely about him. And I've seen him distance himself, especially he corrected that when some leaders came and spoke about the Maa community and the people who come there, he came out and said, no, Kenyans have a right to live anywhere. Kenyans have a right to work anywhere. Kenyans have a right to go to school anywhere, to engage anywhere, to do their businesses anywhere. As a Kenyan, and you're working within the boundaries of this country, you have a right to be anywhere in this country, as long as you're not breaking the law, as long as you're not going there to cause distraction. You're working within the parameters that are in line with the Kenyan Constitution. And so he came and corrected that. I wish he would have said it more strongly, but I also wish that this is a meeting they would have heard earlier before that rally, and say, for everybody who's be given an opportunity to speak today, you have to know and you have to be very conscious of the things that you're going to say. And even if you have to say certain things that you feel is important and needs to be addressed, you have to package it in a manner that it does not appear that you're inciting one community against the other, because from what I was gathering from that meeting, a few leaders there seems to be gunning, for the blood of some people, not literally, but you could tell, you cannot live in isolation in this country. Everybody, we need all of us, if we need to build this country, if we need to move forward, if we need to get rid of, this tribalism, then it has to start with us. It has to start with our leaders, and also it has to start with us as Kenyans. We cannot be supporting this kind of thing. And so, if this BBI President Uhuru Kenyatta, you need to get a hold of it. You really need to get a hold of it together with Mr. Raila Odinga, and whip these people back to what this BBI is about. Let them leave the politics in their party headquarters. When they attend these BBI rallies, let politics have nothing to do with it. I know it's very difficult, especially if it is the politicians who are leading the process. It's very difficult to divorce politics from whatever it is that, even if they're in church, they're still politicians, unfortunately. But we must find a balance and realize this is something that is bigger than a political party, that is bigger than an individual. When President Uhuru Kenyatta will leave power, Raila Odinga will be long gone and perhaps left politics, Kenya will still be here. And so whatever process or whatever thing that they're doing under this Big Bay process should be something that is bigger than any one of them, so that it's able to, the next generations and the next generations that will come after us here, or even after them, will be able to, enjoy the fruits of this BBI and some of the things that have been suggested here. So let me just look at this chapter 4 that a lot of our leaders here drumming up for this BBI report don't seem to understand what this task force came out with about what Kenyans really want. And chapter 4, ethnic antagonism and competition, it says these are a major threat to Kenyans' success, to the very continuity of our country. The task force calls for the following actions to be undertaken. Educate Kenyans on their diverse cultures and traditions and formulate a school curriculum that teaches students about the cultures and traditions of every ethnic and religious community in Kenya. Also, all public boarding secondary schools must enroll 50% of its population from outside the county. That is just the first point. There are around 6 of them. So now, if the BBI task force went, and these are the ideas, these are the thoughts of Kenyans, that for us to get rid of tribalism, for us to be to understand each other's culture and our way of life, for me to appreciate why your culture is different as much as your culture is different from mine, but I'm able to see and appreciate the uniqueness that is your culture and not use it against you and celebrate it instead. Then what the task force initially found that Kenyans now want that all boarding schools across the country enroll 50%, half of the students should be out of the county. In Kenya, we have 47 counties, so should be out of 50% of its the student population who are boarding. Should be out of the county. And this was done deliberately. Kenyans wanted this deliberately because this is the only way. This is the only way we are going to integrate as Kenyans. This is the only way we can see cohesion as Kenyans. So if this is just one of the things that were proposed, and then you see the politicians, can they be having this copy of the BBI? And perhaps before they even write those points and come out and speak, let them go through these points and understand what this BBI is all about, because as if they continue the way they are continuing, and if they continue the way they are right now, this BBI might not get to achieve the intended purpose from the start. And so number 2 of the chapter 4 also says, do away with the winner takes all model of presidency and establish a more inclusive political system. This will transform our political system to be more in line with the consensus-driven traditions of our people and to reduce the appeal of ethnicity as our primary mode of political competition and takes on a do-or-die quality. You can tell these politicians didn't read any of it. All right, then number 3, as a way to reunite our cross-border communities, to change our present ethnic political calculus while building a more prosperous economy, accelerate the process of East African Community Confederation as a step towards political federation. All right. Now that's another challenge with the East African community, and we shall talk about it later. Well, we look at some countries there that need a lot of help in this East African community. So that is also part of the points there on the ethnic antagonism and competition, just interacting even beyond our borders there. And then point number 4: make resource distribution to not only be fair but felt to be fair. Decrease conflict over national resource distribution by treating all Kenyans as equal. This should take into account population, needed investment in health and agriculture, service provision, and access of natural resources and livelihood opportunities. Then number 5, Baraza la Washauri. This is it a committee of advisors? I would translate it from Kiswahili like that. That the president, as a symbol of national unity, should have private advice of eminent, experienced, and honorable citizens serving in a council of advisors on a non-salaried basis. Okay. And then number 6, strengthen the office of the registrar of political parties to enable it to deal with the problem of ethnicization of politics by immediately recruiting and appointing a substantive registrar who is independent and assertive and proactive. You see, that is just chapter 4 of the BBI. This is a draft that was released to the public last week on Wednesday, February 19th, and it was contained in all the leading newspapers here in Kenya. And so I got my copy here, easy for reference to see what this BBI is all about. So from the points that I just read there, and then you look at what our politicians have been taking us through during these BBI rallies, you realize a lot of them don't even know what this BBI is all about. Let them stop putting people there who have no clue of what this BBI is all about. They've not even taken their time to just ponder and see this BBI. What are some of the core things? And not just come there, because all I hear when they stand there is, okay, so now we need this position, and we need this position, and our community needs this position, and our people need. It's just crazy. They've gotten out of the way of the things that are important, and the reason as to why the BBI was formed. Remember, when this BBI was formed, or the task force was formed, or when the handshake happened in this country, we're going through a very rough time as a country. So let's not forget that. And we can even go back to 2007, 2008. Did you see how some Kenyans were even burned in a church? Did you see how Kenyans were hacking against their fellow Kenyans? The bloodshed, the people who died. That madness even got President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy at the ICC answering to crimes against humanity charges, among others, forced deportation. It was chaotic in this country. Then fast forward a few years later, you'd think we have learned from that. Fast forward a few years later, our politicians are now setting up this country to going back to that very dark time that our country went through. That is unacceptable. And the people of goodwill who reside in this country, the citizens of this country, should now start actively shunning away these negative, connotations from our politicians and say, no, that is unacceptable. I don't care. You could be my tribesmen, but whatever you say is not right. And when they see Kenyans are not playing into some of these things they're saying, perhaps they will start rethinking some of these things that they're saying. I'm not saying that Mr. Olekina did not have a point completely. It is how you say it. It is how you say it. The manner in which he expressed, especially if you watched that show, I did not watch the whole of it, and just a bit of it, and some of the clips that have been making rounds on our social media. But when you see the way he was talking, and somebody somewhere perhaps was sitting there from Maasai Island and feeling the injustice from the tribes that they feel have invaded their country, they'll take it very literally and they'll start attacking these people, and that is not right. And parts of, say, Narok County or even Kajiado County, a lot of Kenyans reside there. So a majority of the people who are going to vote, especially from the town areas, are not going to be from the locals. It is cosmopolitan, places and towns. So people must be very careful. People must be very careful. I don't care what part of the country, but people have to be very careful and realize as long as somebody is qualified. We have a few leaders who are serving in different parts of this country who are elected, and they're not from that ethnical background, but they're serving there. And the people from that area love them because they deliver. They're able to serve the people as they were elected to do. All right, so that is what matters. And until we change the standard and how we perceive leadership and how the qualifications we look at, as when we are electing these people, then we still have a long way to go as Kenyans because we have been electing members of parliament from our own tribesmen, our senators now from our own tribesmen, governors from our own tribesmen. And when you go to these counties and see how poor, how corruption, how much they just stealing from their own people. You're like, so what is the point? This tribalism is not serving us well at all. So if somebody else who is outside of the county would come, or a member of parliament, a woman representative, a senator, an MP, whatever, but they're able to deliver, they're able to change my life as a Kenyan citizen, they're able to change the health system in that area and build more clinics so that mothers who are expectant do not have to walk kilometers upon kilometers, go, for clinic visits. Children don't have to walk kilometers upon kilometers to go to school. And when they arrive there, they land under a tree and write on their thighs or on the ground. If somebody would come there that is not from the locals, but is able to do this for me as a citizen who resides in that area, then why should it matter? Because leadership, I think we don't fully understand the concept of leadership. We think if my person is up there, if my people are represented there, even all this representation we are seeing right now, we've seen even some people saying, perhaps now we need more counties. I saw somebody suggesting now we need more counties and cited that part of where they come from, perhaps there should be an extra county, or we need more, we need more constituencies. For what? Because all these things are fueled by tribalism, by negative ethnicity, because you feel my tribe, they do not have enough numbers there. And at the end of the day, they don't get to do anything for us, whether they are our tribesmen, whatever. So we should perhaps change how we perceive leadership and who has leadership qualities that perhaps we want, and allow diversity of ideas and backgrounds. So maybe at that point, Kenya will change, and perhaps we'll realize, what our forefathers fought for. But at this point, I think that President Uhuru Kenyatta should take a hold of this BBI process. I've not heard him even comment so much on when some of these things are said and are not right. President Uhuru Kenyatta, you've been a bit passive when it comes to some things, and you are the architect of this BBI process together with Mr. Raila Odinga. And a lot of times he's the one attending these rallies, and some of this brigade, they're not doing a very good job in terms of articulating the things that you perceived or wanted to be captured in this BBI. So now then, go back to the drawing board and make sure that make it very clear to the politicians, to the people who you have mandated to spearhead this BBI process. Make sure they steer clear, and just I'll make them understand, if you were to go stand there and speak, you cannot stand there and start painting other tribes to be on the wrong, and start inciting Kenyans against other Kenyans. That is not right. That is not right and should not be acceptable. And I just read the chapter 4 of this BBI report about ethnic antagonism and competition. So the point number 1, they want boarding schools across the country to be admitting at least 50% of the students from other ethnical backgrounds that are out of the county. So what are we doing? Are our kids not going to be safe because they're in another county and they're learning in another county? And that has been the tradition of this country. All the national schools are spread across the country. And when you take your child to whatever, I'm not thinking, because it's in such a county, then it is. I don't like it because of it's the majority of the people from that area, from this tribe. I don't look at it like that. And Kenyans never looked at it until very recently. I don't know if it matters still when it comes to education, but I think after what happened in 2007, I think parents sometimes become a bit concerned about the security of their kids, especially during electioneering period, which shouldn't be the case. It's very unfortunate, but it has not gotten to those to that level yet, and shouldn't. And so if I'm going to take my child there because that school does well. So if it's called to a school where it's a national school or it's a school that performs well, I'm happy. The first thing that will not come to my mind is, okay, so now the location, okay, so now the people who stay there. That has never been an issue with Kenyans. But if our politicians continue in this manner, even this 50% of admission of boarding school students from other counties might not be achieved. And there's a reason and a purpose. This was made very deliberate so that Kenyans and young Kenyans, especially, that mind. When you integrate, personally, I speak Kikuyu much better than I do my own language because I grew up in an environment, and it never occurred to me that it was dominated by Kikuyu. You just pray, you find yourself, you're speaking the language, and it's easy on you. And I speak it very well, better than I do my own language, because it was never an issue. We were just having a good time. You're just lucky to learn another language outside of yours, and that was it. It was never a big deal. But now things have changed, and you see, we sit down in our homes and we talk about this negative ethnicity with with our children present. And so when they go out there, our kids have become more aware of their tribal affiliations more than we were when we were growing up. And this has to be blamed on the parents, who are not even very careful. So when this child grows up, I remember one time when we were going for school selection at my son's school, and we were there, and one of the daughters of the classmates, the mother said, okay, so my daughter wants to go to this school from another part of the country. I will not say which one, and they come from a different part of the country. And she goes to say, she really likes being with these people. I don't even understand why. I'm like, wow. Okay, it's very interesting. So you see, when we even sit in our homes and we have this very bad conversation in the presence of our children, and we sit there and demean other tribes in front of our children. Sometimes they're not even involved in that conversation, but they're there listening. You're planting this seed of hatred. You're planting this seed of their growing thinking that they are better than the other tribe. They're better than the other children. They're better than that. Their culture is more superior compared to. So this is a seed you planted. Perhaps you didn't mean to do it. And so this child has grown up in this environment, hearing these things. You tell me, how when they grow up to be adults, this is something that will continue. So even as parents and people, grown-ups, we have to be very aware of the kind of conversations we have in the presence of our children. We must be very careful not to plant these seeds of hatred and ethnicity in them unknowingly, because sometimes we have these conversations. You just see a headline or you're watching the news, and you just comment without thinking that there's a child there. I'm not saying it's good for you to comment when the child is out of the room, but please, if you have already caught the bag of ethnicity, don't pass it on to your child. Let your child grow and judge Kenya or see other people according to their own perspective. But don't plant these negative thoughts in them, these tribal seeds in them, because when they grow up and they become adults, and now it becomes very different. Perhaps they go to a different school, and they go to college, which is usually very diverse, and they go to places of work, which is usually very diverse. And when they already have this stereotype in their head, it might be very difficult for them to interact freely with other Kenyans. So we have to be very, very careful. And Jerry Obi there, good morning, sister. Oh, hail Biafrans. Mike Minor, you're asking me what I'm saying. What I'm saying is tribalism has no place in this country, and every Kenyan is free to work and mingle and be whatever in any part of this country, as long as they are in line with the constitution and they're not breaking any law and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. No Kenyan should be stopped from doing their businesses. No Kenyan should be stopped from accessing any place in this country. And let me tell you, after the 2007-2008 post-election violence, a lot of Kenyans suffered who do business from one side of the country, and they usually take goods from that other side of the country that is not where they initially come from, but they found that the business there is good, and they have established their business there. So they were affected, very much affected. So this has to be this negative ethnicity. This is something that Kenyans must shun. This is something that look at what it has done to a country like South Sudan. That disagreement that is happening there, finally they were able to sign the peace deal. But ethnicity is just one of the things, the fueling factors of the chaos and the chaos that has been there in South Sudan. So even if they've signed the peace deal, but if that is not addressed properly, if the ethnicity factor is not addressed properly, then that country still has a long way to go. The same way, if we continue sowing this seed of negative ethnicity in this country and hate and stereotyping, then this country we are setting ourselves up to something that we might not be able to contain. So as early as it is right now, we must speak against it. Raila Odinga must come out and condemn it, and together with his surrogates, he must come out and tell them, no, that is not the way to go. And I know he said it, but he should state it in very strong terms and have them understand. As much as we are coming to these different counties, the next rally I think will be happening in Meru for the larger Mount Kenya region. They must go there and make sure they stick to the point. And should the locals there want to address their issues, then it has to be, it must be made in a way that, it's not inciting any Kenyan. Still in the spirit of cohesiveness and bringing Kenyans together. That should be at the back of their mind every time they stand to speak. Because it is things like this that have divided this country. You live with your neighbor, you are fine, you do businesses together, you attend the schools that they've started, you go, basically your life is entangled. And then come the electioneering period and you decide, I don't want you anymore. I don't think I like you like that anymore. I don't think you're a good neighbor to me anymore because we don't speak the same language. And so now what I'll do, because I don't agree with your political affiliation or because of whatever language you speak, I'm going to burn down your business. I'm going to chase you here. I'm going to forcefully remove you here. I'm going to take your staff and harm you. That is not right. And that is not in the spirit of the BBI. And so John Clark, I see you're present. Thank you so much. You're saying, I repeat again, BBI was not to carry on platform. To me now, BBI aim is to change NASA outfit on their new outfit under BBI. All right, so you're saying the NASA brigade there has overtaken this BBI, and also the other side of the aisle has also, I think right now, they're having a ball, especially with the latest development in regards to what we've been seeing. And so what I'm saying here, John Clark, is I know it is the politicians who are spearheading this process, and so it's very difficult to divorce politics from this process. But what I'm saying is they should not. They have already hijacked this process. So can President Uhuru Kenyatta and Mr. Raila Odinga go back to the drawing board and relook at some of these things, and also tell the leaders, and as I said, I don't know what time you joined, but I said there earlier, the next time you want to see on this, on the rest of the rallies that are remaining, anybody that will be coming there to make a speech or to speak or to participate, can the committee that is responsible for these rallies first vet what they're coming to say, the points they're coming to give, so that they make sure it is in line with the bigger picture of the BBS. But if it is left the way we've been seeing in the few rallies that have happened, for leaders to come there and make very careless statements there, then it will do President Uhuru Kenyatta no good, and this BBI might not serve the purpose that he intended to serve when they formed it in the first place. So this is something that the president must address very, very urgently, because the BBI, we've seen him talk, it's something very dear and close to his heart. So Mr. President, these people have hijacked the process. So if you don't urgently take hold of this and call them back to the drawing board, and those radical politicians perhaps should not be left to even MC. They should look for people who are sort of neutral and who are sober-minded, who can come there and articulate the issues of the BBI so that Kenyans can understand. So whether you're in support of it or not, but the issues are clear. But from what we've been hearing, and I've been reading this draft that was provided for last Wednesday on the leading newspapers, I hear them talk about nothing that is here, that is contained in this BBI. All I hear is we need more positions. Me as my community, this is what we want. Me as this is what I need. They've really gone off track of the things that they're supposed to be talking about. So John Clark, I understand fully where you're coming from. I've been having similar concerns. So if President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to see this process become successful and really truly the cohesion of Kenya as a country is something that he really seeks to do by uniting Kenyans, and he thought that this BBI would be the right platform and the right way to do it, a good start, and then if he doesn't do something very, very quickly, then this year will be the thing that divides Kenyans, as we have seen. So it's going against the intended purpose, because when after that handshake happened, I think the bigger goal was to make sure, and that is something President Uhuru Kenyatta has said time and time again, he wants to leave a united Kenya. So now, Mr. President, then, if you want to leave a united Kenya, and so this process that you started and initiated of the BBI report, trying to seek for opinion on how Kenya can be more cohesive and Kenya can be more united, and we've seen very important and very important issues here being contained in this report, but the people who go out there to drum for the same report, they don't even know what is contained here, because if they knew, then they'll be very careful in the manner in which they articulate these issues. If they even took their time to read through this report, it appears to capture a lot of things that are of concern and are important to Kenyans. But as long as they continue coming there with the sideshows and coming there being out of topic and out of tune completely with the BBI, and then this one here, I don't know how President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to salvage this process, because now they're even giving ammunition. We've seen a deputy president who has been opposed to this process from the start, and he came out yesterday. He was at a church service. Oh yes, the church services have not stopped at a full gospel church at Gatunduri in Embu there, and he said that he condemned those who think that attending BBI rallies is more important than going to church. But also, he said that this BBI is not those who think that they will use this BBI to disunite Kenyans and to plant seeds of ethnicity. He said that reggae will stop. That is what our Deputy President, Mr. William Ruto, said. So they're giving him ammunition, and for the people who are not in support of this BBI, they're coming out and say, see, we are right. See what they're saying? Now Kenyans can't live in any other part of the country. So it's not just Ole Kina, one person who said it. It becomes the whole team, because I didn't see people boo him there. Instead, when he was saying those sentiments there, even at Narok Stadium, I saw a lot of his kinsmen clapping and cheering him on. But some leaders who were sitting on that podium should have come out and said, no, this is not right. And even when he was having that interview at JK Live on Wednesday, I think those people who tweet a lot and who are friends of his and who mean well and want what's best for this country should have come out and said, no, we agree the Ma community have a problem that perhaps are urgent and need to be solved. So are other Kenyans across this country, because it's not only the Maasai community that was marginalized. We have go to the northeastern part of the country and understand what marginalization looks like, because those are places that were marginalized completely during the long reign of our former president, may God rest his soul, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, and over periods of time it has been neglected. So not just that community, across Kenya and even in Nyanza itself, it is just after President Mwai Kibaki came to power that now we saw good roads starting to be made. We saw the Kisumu airport now being upgraded, and so a lot of these places in terms of development are marginalized. But if you have to articulate these matters, please, can you do it more soberly? Can you do it when you're being very sensitive and also know that you're a leader, and when you stand to speak, Kenyans are listening and your people are listening, and your people, whatever you say is very important, and the others who take it very literally, who cannot see it and start weighing what is it that you say. As long as they feel that you're speaking on their behalf, then it doesn't matter how you say it. They will be supporting it, even if it's not what's best for the country. So our leaders, as I said, there must be very careful, and also must be mindful on how they speak. Let me just take a quick look at the rest of the headlines, and then we will take a short break. And then when we come back, we shall be speaking and looking at other newsmaking headlines across Africa. So thank you so much. Continue writing to me. John Clark, you're saying, Miriam, bottom line, BBI should not be on rallies addressing Wananchi on BBI. At Garissa yesterday, Orengo was hard forcing Wananchi to chorus response back BBI. Yes, and Night, Michael. So you're saying good morning, Miriam. Good morning to you. Just about 5 minutes to noon. Thanks for this important topic. You always come up with good. Thank you so much. And I'll be talking about other things. So just keep it here. After here, we shall be crossing over to the other side of the break where we shall be looking at other news making headlines across Africa. But I just needed to get it off my chest that this BBI process, as much as it was noble from the start, and President Uhuru Kenyatta meant for it to help us move forward as a country and to solve or to address some of the things that have been happening in this country that have not been right. But as we see now, the politicians have hijacked this process and they need to be stopped. That train needs to be stopped, and people need to go back to the drawing board and go back to the core and the center and the purpose of this BBI. So, Mr. President, you have some work to do. Now, on the front pages of the Daily Nation, making of a break, they're looking at that President Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are no longer on good terms is not in doubt. After the bromance on show during their first term, things changed on their re-election in 2017, coming to a head following the president's handshake with the ODM chief Raila Odinga. So the story is on page 4 and 5. If you're interested, you can go and take a look at that. And also, a Chester saga makes things worse for the deputy president. Now, the DP William Ruto has been put in a tight spot by a saga revolving around former Cabinet Secretary Rashida Chester and fake military procurement deal allegedly sealed in his office. While he struggles to extricate himself from the Marquis saga, he will be acutely aware that a reputation already tarnished by allegations of rampant corruption has taken another terrible hit. This might raise questions about his suitability for high office and up and to the ante in the now open feud with President Kenyatta that has divided the ruling Jubilee Party down to the middle. And also on the front pages, this is why Sonko wants me dead. A Jumbo Pay boss accuses embattled city governor of stage managing a road accident that left him in hospital with severe head injuries. He also claims receiving threatening phone calls. Okay, so that is on page 3 of the Daily Nation. And on the Standard newspaper, vote-rich counties that could decide Raila-Ruto battle. And from census to ballot, analysis of the results shows 14 counties which will have more than half of the potential voters in 2022 and are likely to influence outcome of the race to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta. That story is on page 4. And also the last moments of slain Ruto office guard investigations. Remember that officer that was guarding DP Ruto's office that day that Mr. Chesa made now very famous visit there with some, foreigners. And so the officer that was guarding that office, it is said that he committed suicide, but it's very interesting. Yesterday I was watching an investigative piece on, was it the Daily Nation? Very interesting. Was it the Daily Nation? Just one of the, not Daily Nation, but one of the TV stations. I can't remember which one. Very interesting there. And the police there are doing their job. Close friends of Kipyegon Kenei, the police sergeant who was in charge of security of the day Chester visited DP's office, say he was a troubled man after the arrest of former secretary. That is on page 6 of the Standard newspaper. And also Ruto guide family to hire detectives. Keen have lost faith in death probe, furious with the way police are handling the matter. That is on the front pages of the Star newspaper. And also risks losing bond, Sonko accused of threatening key witnesses. Very interesting times there. So, all right, now I think that it is top of the hour here. Noon in Nairobi. A very good afternoon to you. I'll take a very short break and then let's meet on the other side of the break and talk about Africa.
peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Fellow Africans, since 1957, when Ghana gained independence, there has been quite a lot of political, social, economic indicators on the African continent that show that Africa has progressed from pre-independence Africa to post-independence Africa.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
66 years down the road, Africa finds itself with the first country, Ghana, having gained independence. We find ourselves still locked up, controlled, manipulated, instructed, logistically supplied, equipped by foreign powers that dictate our agenda. Africa is endowed with plenty of minerals, resources, good weather. The climate is so favorable for the growth of food enough to sustain us. But we find ourselves in countries where hunger is killing people. Hunger is killing people because most of the people have taken to arms to fight wars, conflicts. Starvation has taken the place of development. In most African countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, in Biafra, and the north of Nigeria there is Boko Haram, Somalia in the Horn of East Africa. We have taken to conflict instead of development. Development was the key indicator. When Kwame Nkrumah made the first speech that seek ye African political unity, economic development will come automatically, he was right. The events happening in Libya today vindicates Nkrumah, vindicates Nyerere, Sekou Toure, and Nasser, the founding fathers of our Pan-Africanism. The events happening in Central African Republic, in Congo today, as the war of rebels ranges on between the rebel and the rebels and the government and the rebels, vindicates the founding fathers of this revolution. Our independence, therefore, was only on paper. Our independence, therefore, was only in symbols. Our independence also was in signs. Our independence also was in boundaries. That we received our flags, but we never received full independence as by the word independence. Most of the 3/4 of African countries, French-speaking countries, have their budgets being done in Paris. Is that independence? The Paris government or the French government does its budgets based on how much they will get from African countries. Is that independence? Is this the Africa that you want? Is it the Africa that we must look at? Is it the Africa that we shall leave for the future generation? If the answer to you is yes, then so be it. But if the answer is no, you agree with me that this is not Africa we want to live for the future generation. Our generations and the future generation need to find a legacy. What is the legacy that Africa and African Union will leave for the future generation? The wars ranging in Libya, in South Sudan, in Khartoum, in Mogadishu, in DRC Congo, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, Boko Haram, Mali, in Mauritania, the uprisings in Algeria, all point to one thing, that yes, we are not yet independent. We are still controlled by external forces. Thank you.
Good afternoon if you're watching me from East Africa. Good morning if you're watching me from the other side, other parts of Africa. Thank you so much for watching, and good evening if you're watching us from the other side of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. The first hour of the show was Good Morning Africa, but now we are at Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to talk about Africa and news making headlines across this continent because we are a Pan-African television station, and so we have a responsibility and we have a mandate as an Africa, wherever you are, to tell your own story, to give your own account of things, and to tell your own story about how Africa is, because sometimes you listen to stories from out there, I'm telling you, and people who think African experts, but they're not from this continent, sometimes the story they tell about Africa is not very pleasant. And so we have a responsibility as a Pan-Africa television station, or even you as an African out there, to make sure you propagate for the Africa you want, for the Africa you know. And when somebody is giving facts that are not correct, you say no, sir, that is not the Africa I know. And as much as we have our own issues and our own problems around this continent, still it is a place that we ought to be very, very proud of. Africa is a beautiful place. Africa is a beautiful continent. Look at the whole of the world right now. All eyes, all attention has been faced towards Africa, because they know something here that perhaps as Africans we don't know about. They understand that Africa is a very rich country. They understand that Africa is endowed with minerals and natural resources. They understand that Africa people are very skilled and are very intellectual, and their intellect is very high, and they're very capable of participating in things in as per the world standards. So we have to tell our story. We have to be the ones telling our story, and to discuss our problems as well and find solutions to that. And so that is why we're here. My name is Miriam Gutu, and the show is Diaspora Dispatches. Biafrans, I see you. You're very present in the house today. Thank you so much. And I have some news from Biafra there. A group of youth there are now telling President Muhammadu Buhari to just let the Igbo people or the Biafrans be led by their traditional rulers, and they do not want a certain security that has been coined to look at the security in that part of the world. But the Biafran Nations Youth League has rejected some of these proposals by the security there in Nigeria. So we shall be looking at that, among other news that we have for you in Africa this morning. And so thank you so much. Keep writing, and while you do, it's normally a pleasure to know where you're watching us from. That way we are able to interact appropriately. So we start with Togo, and Togo's President Faure Gnassingbé has won re-election with 72% of the vote, according to a preliminary result from the Electoral Commission on Monday, extending his 15-year rule and a family dynasty that began when his father took power in 1967. A coup. Despite widespread disaffection and protests calling for him to step down, a fractured opposition has struggled to launch a converted campaign to unseat Gnassingbé in the small Western African country of 8 million people. And still staying with Togo, and a Togo opposition leader has accused authorities of setting up fake polling stations in Saturday's presidential election to skew results in favor of the incumbent. Abiyomi Kojo made the accusations against President Faure Gnassingbé, who has been in power since 2005 when he took over from his father. The president's office is quoted by AFP news agency as denying the accusation. Provisional results, of course, at that point, and put the president to have received 72% of the votes, compared to Kojo, who is now the leading opposition figure there, who had only garnered 18%, but the votes are still being tallied. I think the official results are not yet out, but that is where, according to the projection that has been received so far from the Electoral Commission there in Togo. And so we move to Uganda, where the East African Court of Justice has declined to stop a case challenging the constitutionality of changes in Uganda's presidential term and age limits. This is a fresh blow to President Yoweri Museveni's bid to remain in power when the country goes to the poll in 2021. The case, filed by Kampala-based lawyer Male Mabirizi Kiwanuka, will now be heard and determined in the Arusha-based court. In his application, Mr. Mabirizi wants the East African Court of Justice to halt the implementation of the General Electoral Commission Strategic Plan and Roadmap for the 2020-2021 electoral period. He argues that Uganda has violated the East African Community Treaty on the principles of good governance, have failed to adhere to the principles of democracy, the rule of law, social justice, and the maintenance of universally accepted standards of human rights. All right, and so we go to Burundi, where the National Council of Liberty, CNL, the main opposition party in Burundi, condemned on Saturday a wave of arrest of its local leaders in the province of Bujumbura since Thursday. These arrests were confirmed to AFP news agencies by a police official who spoke of arrests for investigative reasons. According to the CNL, some of the party leaders have been ill-treated, and unfortunately, one of them, Felix Ndikuyo, was beaten to death on Thursday evening. And we go to Mali, where with violence wreaking havoc across the country, authorities in Mali are now looking for new avenues to reach a settlement with the Islamist insurgents operating in the northern part of the West African country. Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta recently said that his government was ready to hold talks with the main jihadist leaders in the country. I don't know. But Mali has been struggling to contain a jihadist rebellion that erupted in the country in 2012. Since then, thousands of civilians and military personnel have died in conflict. Experts say that the recent move was motivated by the Malian government's pragmatism in addressing the rise of violence, albeit certain challenges still lie ahead. And we shall talk about this story. And we go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where now a World Health Organization is urgently appealing for $40 million to salvage its operation to bring the Ebola epidemic to an end in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The Ebola operations in the Eastern DRC, conflict-ridden North Kivu and Ituri provinces is on financial life support. The World Health Organization reports its coffers will be empty at the end of this month. It is urging donors to step up and immediately contribute the money needed to tackle this virulent disease. And we go to South Sudan, where now the United States has welcomed the formation of the Government of National Unity, saying real work begins now. On Saturday, President Salva Kiir appointed leader Dr. Riek Machar first vice president. He also appointed Taban Deng, Rebecca Nyandeng, James Wani as vice president in line with the September 2018 revitalized peace agreement. The 4 deputies took oath of office the same day. However, the presidency is yet to appoint ministers and 1 representative of the South Sudan Opposition Alliance as a vice president. And we go to Biafra, and some news from there now says that Biafra Nations Youth League, BNYL, has rejected a community policing format proposed by the Inspector General of Police, IGP, for the Southeast region. The BNYL also faulted Southeast leaders for accepting the idea. National leader of the youth, Prince Will Chimezia Richard, while addressing reporters in Owerri, Imo State capital on Saturday, said that any security still controlled by the federal government ends in futility. He lamented the decision of the Southeast governors to sideline Ohaneze Ngimbo, these names are very difficult for me to pronounce sometimes, and other Pan-Igbo organizations who have rejected the proposed community policing. He said that leaders of Igbo land and other areas in the East rest with these social cultural organizations and not their political leaders. And we go to Burkina Faso, where more than 4,000 people are being forced to flee their homes daily in Burkina Faso as attacks on civilians by armed groups increase in number and frequency, the United Nations has warned. In a statement on Friday, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, said more than 700,000 people were displaced in the last 12 months, with an estimated of 150,000 of them being uprooted in the last 3 weeks alone. And we go to Zimbabwe now, where the British government plans to reject a European Union decision to lift sanctions on the wife of the late Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, suggesting its approach to financially targeting foreign individuals will diverge from the bloc's, the Sunday Telegraph has reported. Now, the UK suspended an order freezing the assets of Grace Mugabe after the EU's decision last week because it's bound to follow the bloc sanctions decisions until the Brexit transition period expires at the year's end. Yet, the British government disagreed with the decision and plans to reimpose sanctions on Mugabe once the transition period is over, the newspaper reported, without saying where it got the information on Monday last week. The bloc renewed its arms embargo against Zimbabwe and will maintain a targeted assets freeze against the state-controlled armaments company Zimbabwean Defense Industry. Restrictive measures were initially introduced in 2002 in response to serious human rights violations by Mugabe's government. I'm thinking the British problem with Zimbabwe now is becoming a bit very personal there. It's not just a diplomatic spate that has really lasted for years now, over 20 years, but now it's becoming very, very, personal there. British and what they hold against Zimbabwe. The man is dead. Robert Mugabe is long gone. I know the President Mnangagwa there worked with him during his long leadership there, and so there are things you feel. Of course, President Mnangagwa is still blamed over the deaths that happened there in Matambele land years ago, and so you're viewing Mnangagwa as still a continuation of what Robert Mugabe was. Mnangagwa was elected after the ousting of President Mugabe, and he had flown away from the country because they had fallen out and Mugabe wanted to arrest him. Can you just let it go already and give this country a breathing space? I don't know. The British are becoming very personal in the manner they're dealing with Zimbabwe that should bother the rest of Africa. Remember during the African summit that happened a couple of earlier January, and every African country was invited except for Zimbabwe, and other African leaders actually showed up. And nobody spoke against it. Other African leaders showed up. So we we really, I don't know if this will work in helping Zimbabwe, a country that is already suffering. When you hear there's no good news coming from Zimbabwe, it's always a crisis after crisis after crisis, and now half the country is facing starvation, and the new money that was introduced is not helping the economy at all, and they have a shortage of foreign currency because they've been using the US dollar, and when you go to and apply for your passport, you can wait for even a whole year without getting. There's a huge backlog because they cannot import papers, special papers that are needed, or materials that are required to print new passports. So this is a country that cannot even print its own passports because they're having serious economic times. Come on now, I don't know, but I'm just finding it a bit personal, this matter between British and Zimbabwe, and I understand where this stems from after the controversial land reforms that was introduced by Mugabe. Before then, Mugabe used to be the darling of the West. Remember, he studied there. He was quintessentially very British in the manner in which he handled himself. He spoke, by the way, when you look at just go look at Mugabe's speeches, and a very his intellect was very rare in the leadership here in Africa, because a lot of times you just elect people who just don't even, who even the intellectual capacity is very questionable. But Mugabe was brilliant, and he was a well-educated man who went to the best universities there from London, and so he understood, and for a long time they were getting well just fine until he decided, you know what, you cannot, a very small population of people cannot be holding the land while the majority of the people who rightfully own this land are living as squatters. Cannot. And so an agreement was entered. So I don't know why they keep blaming Zimbabwe for this. There was an agreement when Mr. late Mugabe first brought this matter, and there was an agreement between now the government of Zimbabwe and also British. And they said, okay, fine, if you really want to relocate this land, then there should be a manner in which we are doing this. And the British promised to sponsor this whole process and to help repay back the white farmers, and the whole process. And so the Lancaster Agreement, you go look for it, you'll see. So the British failed to meet their part of the bargain. So now, since then, Mr. Mugabe was vilified, and he became the biggest, bad person the white people over there have ever seen. Mugabe's history is not very good, and I'm not sitting here trying to paint him as an angel. I think when he started, when you look at the history and you just go look at documentaries that have really captured this, his earlier days in his presidency, he was doing very well, especially when he was with his first wife, Sally, until she died. And then before she died, he was already having an affair. I'm not sure, I was not there, with Grace Mugabe, and then who was the secretary then. And so when you see Sally, who was Ghanaian and had come from also a politically aware background, and she was also very well educated and a respectable woman who understood her place as the First Lady of Zimbabwe. It is said that she was the beacon of the leadership of President Mugabe then, and she would advise him appropriately, and she really stood there. In fact, she's buried at the Heroes Corner there, and no wonder Grace Mugabe could not let Robert Mugabe be buried next to the first wife. She's buried at the Heroes Corner there in Harare. So British and Zimbabwe were very good friends until this happened. But now, after Grace Mugabe became the wife to Mugabe, now things changed, and it is said she really greatly contributed towards his downfall. And as a plunder of the economy, she's very extravagant. She's just very high flying and very flamboyant, and that came at the expense of Zimbabwe's taxpayer, and with a country that has been struggling. She was not the most liked person in Zimbabwe, still not, but still, I don't know why I don't know why the British cannot just let Zimbabwe be. What is it? What is it? I understand it is the land issue, and I saw even Mike Pompeo giving a warning to, is it South Africa, who are also in the process of land repatriation, and I've heard them speak. Mike Pompeo made a speech the other time, and he said he's watching in how South Africa will handle this matter, because the land issue is also a very murky issue, and in the thorn of the ANC party, who after 25 years plus leading that country after apartheid, the people are still angered, and South Africa is still walking around feeling very disillusioned, because they thought with the coming of a black leadership and their own people at the helm of leadership and leadership of that country, their lives will change. Instead, what we see after every official in the ANC, they're now going to court being charged with corruption. They plundered even that which was left, and they've not done anything to improve the life of the black South Africans there, who are now, instead of going to fight the right people, they're coming in and leeching other other Africans who are there trying to make a living, who found themselves there in very unfortunate situations as refugees or any other way, because a lot of, when wars are happening in places like Zimbabwe and you're targeted and the economy is bad, a lot of Zimbabweans found their way to South Africa. Zimbabwe, there's a point where, I don't know if they've changed anything yet, but there's a point where even the basic medication you could not find in a health center. So they will just cross the border to South Africa to even get the most basic services there. So this targeted, hate towards other Africans that we are trying to tell our leaders here in Kenya that should not be encouraged at all. Otherwise, it will not work very well for us as a country. Let me just continue with my news, and then we'll go back to Biafra and look at this Mali story here. This president who now wants to start talking to these terrorist groups. Is it going to be like what I'm seeing in Taliban having conversations with Americans and also with Afghanistan? And even as the conversations were and the talks, the dialogue was continuing, the Taliban still are causing mayhem there. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if now the next thing you'll hear, Boko Haram in Nigeria wants to have talks and dialogue with the president, and they want to be recognized. Before you know it, they want to have their own section of the country, which already they do, but unofficially, because the government of Buhari has not been very strong in curbing and Boko Haram. So we'll talk about this. Let me just finish two stories remaining. And at least 29 people have been injured, that is in Ethiopia, in an attack at a political rally in support of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in southern Ethiopia, according to a regional police head. The Prime Minister himself was not there. Now, police say 6 suspects have been arrested following the attack on the rally in Ambo town on Sunday. Oromia Regional State Police Commissioner Aratsa Merdesa is quoted by the state-run Ethiopian news agency as saying it was a grenade attack. But why? All right, and so we end with some news that concerns South Sudan, and the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, has now congratulated the people and the government of South Sudan on the successful formation of the revitalized transitional government of national unity on Saturday. The South Sudan Agreement, known as the Revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan, RARCSS, was signed in September 12, 2018, and the Revitalized Transitional Government of National Unity, RTGONU, was scheduled to be formed on February 22nd, 2020, and in a statement on Sunday, the chairperson of the AU Commission has commended the signatories of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan for reaching the important milestone towards building a peaceful, stable, and united, prosperous country. Now, a peaceful and stable and united and prosperous country might take I don't know. I think it might not take very long to achieve that. But does the leadership of South Sudan, is that on their priority, or now what we will start seeing seeing is another tug of war and other, power games there in South Sudan. And I was reading earlier on the show, we saw the message there from the United States, the United States ambassador to the UN, who came out to say that he welcomed the move by the officials there at South Sudan to come together, but now said real work began on Saturday. So I don't know what the agendas are. I don't know if just positions is what is going to matter there, because as we've always been saying here, the peace deal, as it were, framed, was flawed from the start. The bigger things that are really important to South Sudanese was not really captured fully there, and we've seen it has just been a power play between President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar, who was sworn in, by the way, for the third time on Saturday. Remember, he was sworn in the first time, and then after they were all fired, the ministers, remember, in 2013, that brought this war to where it is, because Mr. President Salva Kiir thought, or I don't know where he had gotten the information that Riek Machar was trying to oust him from power. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to up one on you before you come here with your ideas. But those allegations were not substantiated. And so it has been a long journey. 6 years of nothing but pain and anguish for the people of South Sudan. 6 years, 2.2 million refugees, South Sudanese refugees living in refugee camps, and others were spread across the world. It has been a very difficult time for the citizen of this country. And so we've been sitting here talking about South Sudan every single day. I don't think there's a day that passed that we did not bring South Sudan matter. So we are happy that happened. That is a good step towards. But now they have to realize that there will be no one out there. People are already tired. Let me tell you. Even the last meetings were just being ran on fuse, because people and stakeholders and the international community had exhausted all their efforts in trying to coerce these leaders and have them understand the importance of having peace in their own country. They did not. And so now, I don't think the international community and IGAD and everybody else now will be there at the doorsteps of Juba State House. They're trying to tell them, so now you have to rebuild your country. No, now you have to, even if you disagree, disagreements are very healthy in a democratic space. You must allow for a divergence of ideas. Otherwise, it's going to be like what we see in a few African countries where you can't really speak, like Uganda, for example. Like other countries in Africa, where your ideas and if you're saying something that is outside of what the government perceived to be right, then they don't want to hear it. Matter of fact, you'll be persecuted. So in a healthy democracy, then they must allow for divergence of ideas, and they must learn to listen to one another. They must learn to allow other people to bring in ideas, and President Salva Kiir must now step up and show leadership that the South Sudanese have been looking for. There has been a leadership vacuum in South Sudan. To be honest with you, there has been a vacuum, and so now he has to step up and realize that the bigger work starts now. Rebuilding that country gonna take some time, but as long as they have the right attitude and they have their priorities right, then it's not gonna be very difficult. So it's not gonna be a rose in the park, and so the rebuilding of South Sudan starts now. The people cannot come back until you assure them that their security is guaranteed, until you assure them that those militia that still exist in the army have been taken care of, and their mindset have been tuned to the current peace and the unity government that has been formed. A lot still has to be done, but that was a good step. And I still wonder, why did it take so long, President Salva Kiir and Mr. Riek Machar? Why? But anyway, finally you are able to do that. But still, leadership, you have to step up and make sure that South Sudanese want to come back home now. You have to convince them why living in the refugee camps is not good, and come back, because your security will be guaranteed. Because a lot of South Sudanese now are feeling much safer staying at the refugee camps with the deplorable situation. When I look at the images from South Sudan, I don't know if our production can run just some of those images. Very undignifying, very sad when you look at that. And I was watching another conversation that was being held at Al Jazeera last evening, and they were discussing the South Sudan and what really the way forward. And when they play those images, I have to hold myself together, because it's very sad. And I've always wondered, how has these leaders not been touched? When you see and watch your own people, you see children who have never gone to school. South Sudan has the highest percentage, one of the countries with the highest percentage of people who have not gone to school. Is it nearly 75% or so, a huge percentage of children who have never stepped into a school, unless you left the country and you were in perhaps Kenya, Uganda, or any other country across the world, then you've gone to school. But for the kids who have remained in South Sudan, they've not had an opportunity to go to school, because there are no those structures, and the insecurity have made it impossible. So a lot of things needs to be done. Joseph Otto, you're saying 5 vice president. In your Luo actually proverb, you're saying many rats cannot dig a hole. I'm worried. I know, because this perhaps now will bring in power struggles, and everybody will be seeking to defend their own position, because these 5 vice presidents, they are representing their own people, their own parties, their own interests. So they're not really representing the people of South Sudan as such. It was just created to serve the interests of the political elite. So still, that is why we keep saying the peace process in South Sudan was flawed from the start. If creating more positions was a way to finding peace and to pacify some communities, I don't know how long the country will be able to manage this. Judging even from the difficult economic situation that South Sudan is dealing with right now, because of that, South Sudan is the second most corrupt country in the world, because there are no structures, there are no the institutions there, the police, it's nothing is working, because South Sudan was only 2 years into being an independent state, before the war broke in 2013. So they did not have enough time to really build this country, to really start. They were starting a new country. They did not have enough time to do that before the war broke. And now, 6 years of very unfortunate at times there for the people of South Sudan. 6 years of pain, 6 years of anguish, 6 years of disillusionment, 6 years of difficulties and problems and challenges, and just leaving one refugee camp to the other. 6 years just sitting somewhere in a tent. Can you imagine? Because your leaders have refused to agree, and now you cannot go back because your security is not guaranteed. So I'm just sitting here. I am happy that they did it, but I'm also mad that it took them so long. It took them so long, and they continued fighting ego, power sharing, just power angry leaders. And that is what we see across Africa. Leaders who don't even care about anything to do with their citizens. They're just concerned about, what am I getting out of this? What is it there? What is at stake for me and for a few people who surround me? They don't have the bigger picture of the country and their people. And so very sad images there, mothers and children and young men and women. It's just sad. So I look at that and I get concerned. Let me tell you, Kwanzaa, I don't even want to watch that when I'm eating. Immediately I lose my appetite, because I'm thinking, how can human beings live in such a humane way while they can be living better? And yet their governments, the people who are supposed to be most concerned about them, don't even care. They just sit there and start worrying about what's best for me, while the people they purport to be leading are living in such conditions. It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable, and it is something that should be condemned. And a report last week that was presented to the United Nations Security Council said that South Sudanese leaders have been starving the citizens intentionally. Meaning, if you come from, say, you were I will not mention the tribal names, but if you come from one tribe A, and the person who is in charge of giving this help or food from say Red Cross or at these other international aid organizations, it's not even their own. It has been provided for by the donor, so they bring. But if you're in charge of providing this food, but you're from tribe B, and where you are, it is tribe A that is supposed to be receiving this help, then you refuse to give them. So that is what has been happening in South Sudan, and very unfortunate. And now that human rights group is saying is that they have been collecting data and they have been collecting information, and the people who have been responsible in this will be charged in international court. I don't know if they will take them to the ICC for crimes against humanity, but either way, I'm a strong believer of taking responsibility. And if you take responsibility, then there has to be some justice that has to be served, because a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people were subjected. Somebody needs to take responsibility of what has become of South Sudan. Can we just talk about this matter of Mali before I forget? Of now President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta now saying he wants to get into talks with this Islamist extremist, this jihadist group, another arm of Boko Haram, who, by the way, last week, the Senate there in Nigeria were also... a bill was presented to the Senate, and they started debating on Thursday in Nigeria Senate Parliament. And so they were debating on how to end and how to curb Boko Haram, which really leaves me very perplexed, because this is something that has been a problem, and we have been sitting here speaking about Boko Haram, and the chaos and the reports that we receive, and the mayhem that they are causing, not just in Nigeria, but in other parts of, especially the Sahel region. The insecurity has gone to, levels that has never been seen before. But it's just like a month ago or so that now the government of Nigeria is just waking up and saying, you know what? Maybe Boko Haram is a problem. And now Senate was saying that they should recruit like over 100,000 more soldiers urgently, so that they can help in fighting Boko Haram, and also reintegrate back Boko Haram repentance. Is that what they said? They were saying, yeah, I think that is the term that they used. The former Boko Haram fighters who have repented, should be accepted back. And Biafrans, as we have been having these conversations, you've been saying, oh no, this Boko Haram are already in the Nigerian army. And it's all right. Okay. Joseph, you're saying it like the world honorable and general, not so much in South Sudan. Honorable. Okay, you know what? I agree with you. And you're also saying doctor, engineer, lawyer, professor, etc. are not important. They're all really, because everybody's okay. All right. But South Sudan has the largest percentage of people who are uneducated. That is because of the war there in South Sudan, except for the South Sudanese who moved to Kenya, moved to Uganda, moved to the US, moved to Australia, and other parts of Africa and other parts of the world. They have gone there and, they've received an education. But so far, those who remained in South Sudan, it has not been very easy for them there. All right, but I understand. Joseph, I understand where you're coming from. And thank you so much for watching. Henry Prince, you're saying, all hail Biafra. Joseph, saying Biafra is the only solution. And Chinonso, you're talking about Biafra. Anibweze, Chuku Ebuka. You guys have long names. I hope I'm saying it right. Thank you so much for watching. Anibweze. Funny Boys, right? Night Michael. So you're saying if you care about people of South Sudan, but our government only care about themselves, no one have the heart for their own people. I just want them to go to the camps in Uganda, see the suffering of the people. I know, right? Just from the human point of view, I don't know how they sit and they still are able to hold their fork and knife and just enjoy their dinner while their people are suffering in the camps. Mr. Machar was just sitting very comfortably there in Khartoum with full security and being taken care of very well, and not to worry that his presence was needed back in Juba to solve the stalemate. Of course, he was worried about his security. But that aside, I think if they had seen the bigger picture of their own people, that would have moved them very swiftly. And this solution, this back and forth of states and whatnot, would not have mattered. But you know what? Either way, I'm glad they were able to do that. But still, I feel, why did it take so long to do that? John Waliako, you're saying, all hail Biafra. Ogochuku, you're saying we shall never forget. Kentino Anyanmu, you're saying African support Biafra for the betterment of all Africans. The problem why Nigeria don't want to let go is because without Biafrans there will be no Nigeria. Can you let's talk about? Oh, he said, Dominic Nwando, and he said actually that the senator, I can't remember his name. I didn't get the story, but I was reading it, and he said the majority of the 100,000 should come from his own state. And I said, this is a matter of national security. I don't even care who, as long as they're qualified. And that is what now our politics and our leadership, looks like here in Africa. We only look out for ethnicity has really taken root, even to things that ethnicity should not even form a basis. Yeah, this senator, I read that news here, I think on Friday, and I was shocked as much as you were. I don't know if you watched the Friday show, when he said we need 100,000 soldiers urgently recruited, but majority of them should come from my own county. And I said, are you serious? Nigeria is such a huge country with how many people in terms of population, and now you think that where you represent deserves more than the rest of the parts of Nigeria. That is ridiculous, and that is how our leaders they want ethnicity to be at play and at part in everything that is even shouldn't, like a matter of national security. And I'm just shocked that Nigerian politicians, they are just waking up to the fact. In fact, Mr. Buhari made a statement earlier in January, and he said he is shocked that Boko Haram even still exists, because according to him, Boko Haram was technically defeated, and so even when he was campaigning for the last time, Boko Haram was not part of his agenda. But remember, when he was campaigning for his first term, he had come out and said, I will defeat Boko Haram in 100 days. 4 years plus later, Boko Haram has continued to thrive. Boko Haram has continued to grow. And now we see here Mali, which is also dealing with the problems that arise from extremist activities and jihadist activities. That is also a branch of Boko Haram. Don't forget that the Sahel region, Boko Haram has really spread its tentacles. So now President Boubacar Keïta is saying now he should start having talks with these jihadist leaders in the country. What are we doing here in Africa? Are we not going to encourage, like I said earlier, Boko Haram will come out and say, come on now, we also want to talk with the Nigerian government. We also want to be recognized as whatever part or branch of government or whatever. They will also want to have such talks. So I don't know why President of Mali, Mr. Ibrahim Boubacar, would want to have talks with this group. We will encourage people like Al-Shabaab to come out now and claim their place and their space there in Somalia and some parts of Kenya here. We will have the Islamist state that is really causing chaos in, in Mozambique there. There's also an Al-Shabaab there. We will have them want to come to the table and have conversations with the government. This is something that cannot be accepted. We cannot encourage, because now we'll see even the ones that have been acting on a very low tones. If they see a president of Mali recognize and wanting to come to the table and talk with an illegitimate jihadist group that has been killing its citizens there, that has been causing mayhem and causing insecurity in that country. And now you want to invite them to the table where? At State House in Mali or where? And have talks with them. What are you saying to the world? And even as we speak, what really really very interesting about this story is that France, as we speak, has about 4,500 troops in the Sahel region. So they've been helping with security over there. Remember, Mali is a former colony of France, and also the United Nations, mission in Mali has about 14,000 peacekeeping troops. 14,000. On top of that, add the Malian army. What is this president telling us? What is it that do you know about this jihadist group that you're not telling us about in the world? What does President Muhammadu Buhari know about Boko Haram that he has refused to get help from the international community to come and help him deal with it? What is it that he has refused to come out? South Africa offered to come and help. The United States offered to come and help. Have you seen any outside army come in or country come in and help Nigeria fight Boko Haram? No, because President Buhari said, you know what, I have this in control. Our Nigeria army is very capable and our security agencies are very capable of dealing with Boko Haram. So no, we don't need any help. And what have you seen so far? People dying. Reading the news, there's some news I also saw. Boko Haram caused some killings there over the weekend, and in some news there I read earlier in Burkina Faso, we've seen it has been death upon death. Niger and now Mali. Also, who has have been a casualty on this insecurity that has been caused by Boko Haram. And now Mali wants to go to the table and sit with this jihadist group and have conversations over what? And what I don't understand, 14,000 peacekeeping troops in Mali from the United Nations. What are these people doing there? And they're paid very hefty salaries, this army, by the United Nations. 14,000 troops. What are they doing in that country? And France has over 4,500. France has been trying. But still, I want to understand, what is it that President Boubacar Keïta knows about this jihadist group that has caused insecurity in his country? And now that he feels it's very important for him to have talks with them, he needs to tell the world what the connection. He needs to tell the world, why is it that the jihadist group there, another wing of Boko Haram, has grown to the level now it has taken over parts of the country, like Boko Haram has taken over parts of Nigeria, and President Buhari has been sitting very pretty, just woke up from a slumber to realize Nigeria is very insecure, and now he's saying he is really astonished. I thought Boko Haram was non-existent, and I'm thinking, where have you been? Month in, month out, day in, day out, we are sitting here accounting for the deaths of people who have been murdered from Boko Haram. Was it not in Nigeria when a whole group of a school was kidnapped and the girls, you remember? Over 200 girls were kidnapped. Was it not in Nigeria? That is, if that wasn't a red flag enough, years later, he's just sitting there pretty. And I don't know how Nigerians keep having this president. I'm sorry. Number one priority or responsibility of a head of state is to ensure security for his people inside their borders. And that is why we have the army, to ensure there's no aggression from any outsider that can harm the people of their country. And then should there be an internal aggression, the army must come in to ensure the people in that country and other security agencies to ensure that the people in that country are safe. So he has failed Nigerians in that regard, not even just the, Biafrans. President Buhari has failed Nigerians miserably in terms of us providing them with the security that he's supposed to be providing them as the head of states. So why they can't even recall him? Why he cannot even come to Parliament and answer to some questions? I don't know how the processes go there in the federal state of Nigeria, but I think somebody should ask for, what President Buhari's thoughts. He needs to tell the country and make it very clear. Is he committed to finding security, to ensuring that Nigerians are secure? Is he committed to that? Or what is it? What are the links between him and Boko Haram that he has refused to come in very punitively and make sure that Boko Haram is a thing of the past? At least pretend that you're trying to curtail them, at least. But we've not seen that happen. Instead, here Boko Haram has taken over a whole highway in Madiguri and that part of the country. Here Boko Haram has gone into, remember, the people who were killed in Delta. But that happened. That was caused by the herdsmen. The Fulanis are here, and it has been insecurity after insecurity. And so now, when the people of Biafra are not feeling very safe being in Nigeria, and they're saying, "Can you let us go decide on our own security? Can you allow us a referendum and just let us go decide on our own fate?" Because we cannot continue being part of this charade of a leadership. You'll not even allow them that. And so it's very unfortunate there. And speaking about Biafra, the Biafra Nations Youth League, BNYL, has rejected a community policing format proposed by the Inspector General of Police. I don't know this community policing. I don't know what it entails, but it appears it is not something that the youth there in Biafra are in agreement with. The security things that Nigerian government has been trying to bring security with in the southern part of Nigeria and southeastern part of Nigeria, I don't understand. While the other side of the country, the northern part of the country, is in full chaos, but you still find the need to come and interrupt the peaceful people over there in that part of the country. I don't understand. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know what this is all about. So the young nations, the Biafra Nations Young Youth League, they've rejected the community policing that is being introduced by the Inspector General of Police, and they're saying just leave us with our own social cultural organizations. They don't want any political leaders coming there and telling them what to do. I don't know what you have to say about this. I don't know. Somebody there is thinking, I don't know, he is worried about what I said there. What I'm saying is, I don't know who this is, David Adioha. You're saying, please, for your information, Nigeria is not a country. Nigeria is a British company. Okay, so you're saying it's not even President Buhari who's running, the government there. Nigeria is under the leadership of other people who are calling the shots. And you know what? Judging from what I'm seeing happening there and the insecurity, and I don't know what is your opinion about Senate, this bill that was introduced in Senate on Thursday that seeks to integrate back, I think, the people who have repented, who are in Boko Haram, number one. I think that was the bill that was introduced on Thursday. They want to bring back the former Boko Haram extremists. I don't know if they understand that Boko Haram can play them at their own game. They can decide, you know what, 100 of you just go out there and give yourselves and say you have repented, because we need you to infiltrate the system there in Nigeria. I don't know if they understand the capabilities of Boko Haram, because so many years later, it has the government of Nigeria cannot defeat them, has been unable to. Is it unable to or unwilling to get rid of Boko Haram? So what Boko Haram then can do is say, you know what, they want to have our former members to join the army. So why can't you just go back to your villages, 200 of you, and just repent, go through all that rehabilitation process? Do you know what will happen? I was reading here on Friday, and we saw some of the programs that the senators think will really bring these people back to as the right standing members of the society. Because what they don't understand is, the reason why it's very easy to lure our young men especially, is because the lack of jobs, the hopelessness that the youth in Africa find themselves in today. So it's easy for the extremist groups to come in and say, you know what, you don't have a job. And you know why? Because this government is this and this and that. It is because these leaders don't really care. So they come in to fill that gap and the disillusionment that they feel is not being addressed by their government. So it's easy to win them over and say, you know what, here you can fight for that right, you can be accepted, and you can, in the process, you can benefit from this and that. And also, let's not forget, it's an ideological war, so it's very complicated when it comes to fighting it. These are people who've been brainwashed into believing other things, and also that plays into their hopelessness. So they get to feel needed and wanted there. So they have no problem going out there and murdering and killing and maiming and things like that. So, but now, what the Senate was suggesting, or part of that bill, was that these members who have repented, they should be taken through a rehabilitation process and be taught what? Some arts and what was that? And I was thinking, you're not even serious. Some arts and some things that cannot benefit these young people. So they don't have proper structures in place that even if they receive back the repented members of Boko Haram, as they are saying, they can really fully be reintegrated into the society. If you don't get solutions to the reasons as to why in the first place they found Boko Haram to be attractive, trust you me, they'll still go back there. But now Boko Haram, as I've said there, might take advantage of this and decide, you go out there, go to the chief, go to the church, go to whatever, repent, give back or whatever, and submit yourself, because we need you to join that army and we need you to infiltrate. So I don't know if having Boko Haram's back into the Nigerian army is the right thing. And that rehabilitation process, can you please ensure that we'll completely rehabilitate this extremist? You have to be very careful, because while some people have been calling for the security agencies there, the people who are manning the Nigerian security at the top, to resign, I saw a government spokesperson speak last week, and he came out and said, we have to be very careful. We cannot fire them, because if we fire them, then we shall be increasing the insecurity. And I thought, wait a minute. If I was hired somewhere and I was not performing and I was not doing my job, I would absolutely be fired. If I was not doing my job here, I'll be fired. Or you out there who is watching, if your boss was just walking in and you're just on Facebook throughout on their time, they'll fire you, period. So if somebody is not performing, and we've seen the deteriorating security there, or lack thereof, in Nigeria, and you don't feel they could be fired, because if they're fired, then that poses more insecurity. What are you telling us? Are you saying that these people who are at the helm of the security in Nigeria are responsible for the insecurity? Because that is what I thought that have meant. If not, they're not performing, fire them. And if not, let the people of Nigeria ask for accountability from the commander-in-chief of the security in that country, which is President Muhammadu Buhari. Let him be held accountable, something that, perhaps Nigerians up there are not doing. Biafran seems to be the ones agitating and calling President Buhari, out for what he's doing and for the lack of security there in Nigeria. Are you, Ogundimu, you're saying the bill is madness? I thought, I don't know if these old people, and when you see a whole, I have no problem against old people. I'll be an old person soon, just after 10 minutes. Before you know it, you're old. Young doesn't stay for long. But what I see in a lot of our African leadership, when you look at the ministers, when you look at somebody like Paul Biya of Cameroon, you see the age, the people that he have appointed to the ministerial post. And then you come to Nigeria, you come to Kenya, not so much. I think we, after the last few years, we've been trying to inject some young blood into leadership who has sometimes end up to be the masterminds of, looters and all. So I don't know if we're going to win, young or old. I don't know if this is a war we're going to win, but it is a good step. So a lot of young people feel represented, okay? So now in Nigeria, see, a lot of even these senators, governors, and I see it, but here it's a bit balanced. We used to have them like that during Moi's reigns. Very old people in government who are completely out of touch, and that is my point. This senator, when you look at him, he's quite old. Is out of touch. I think what he's just trying to do there is just protect his interest. He does not really care what is happening in Nigeria. They are out of tune. They don't know what is happening. Absolutely nothing. So perhaps people who are aware of what is really ailing our countries, these are the people who we should be electing as leaders. The people who are in touch with the needs of the people they're supposed to represent. These are the people we are supposed to be electing as leaders. But so far, we also encourage this madness. We also encourage people who do not even cut even the minimum cut. They don't qualify, but we still elect them because we speak the same language. He's from my ethnical background. He is, I don't know what, our standard and our yardstick in leadership, I can say as Africans, we really fail ourselves. We really, really fail ourselves. And then once we get these people there and we realize they don't care, and now we start complaining, and yet we are the ones who have set ourselves up for disaster, as we can see now in Nigeria and in other parts of Africa. So this conversation of Mali President Mr. Boubacar Keïta wanting to have conversation with this jihadist group, another arm of Boko Haram, this is something that should not be encouraged, because I say if he goes ahead and does this, and all these 14,000 troops of the United Nations mission there in Mali, I don't know what they're doing. If they cannot help bring peace and stability and try to curb, or maybe they should reward their mission there and not be a peacekeeping mission anymore. Just be the hunting over the jihadist group, because this peacekeeping mission works only when it's a civil war sometimes. But when you have a jihadist group, people who have nothing to lose and who are just out there bailing for blood, there's nothing like peace. These are people that they need to go very hard, and the fact that you want now to create a bigger space for them to bring them to the table and have conversations, you tell me then what Boko Haram will ask for there in in Nigeria. They'll want to even have part of their country and now form their own country with those weird ideologies there. So I think this is uncalled for. I think this is not necessary. And this will only encourage more groups to come out and demand for that. Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that my time is long gone. And we've not talked about even the case that President Yoweri Museveni faces in the East African Court of Justice to stop has declined to the East African Court of Justice has declined to stop a case challenging the constitutionality of changes in Uganda's presidential term limits. Remember that was changed last year there, and President Museveni seems to now have a case upon him there in the East African Court of Justice, and this case was filed by a Kampala-based lawyer, Mr. Mabirizi Kiwanuka, and will now be heard and determined in the Arusha-based courts. And this is something that I'll be following, and like I keep saying, even for Uganda, it's just a matter of time. Africans, we are getting more, as the young people will say, woke. I don't even know what that means. But from my own interpretation, means aware. We're becoming more aware, and we're demanding for better. I wish we could just demand for much more better, but we're becoming more aware. So we are coming to a place where if you're not serving our interests, if you're not doing right by your people, you will be gone. And for Uganda's president, Mr. Yoweri Museveni, I think he's just way past the expiry date. He's way past the required time. So Ugandans are watching, and slowly by slowly, it's only that the way Dr. Matsanga sometimes says here, the only reason why Ugandans are very quiet is because agriculture sector there is doing very well. So people are full. So when people are not, hungry, they're okay. They don't find a need to go out in the streets and protest. But I'm telling you, a time is coming when the younger generation, which is now even the bigger population of the voters there, will start demanding for a change, and will start demanding for accountability, and will start demanding for better, and will start demanding for a change in leadership. And so these are just a thing. Remember, this case was defeated in the Ugandan court, and so he took it to the East African Court of Justice. So let's just see. So this case will be heard and determined there in the East African Court of Justice to see if it's in line. He argues that Uganda has violated the East African Community Treaty on the principles of good governance, failed to adhere to the principles of democracy, the rule of law, social justice, and the maintenance of universally accepted standards of human rights. And those are things that we all see if you've been watching any news coming from Nigeria. Democracy is dead. That was dead on arrival. Even the suggestions that the Supreme Court of Uganda there said that should be made in terms of electoral reforms before the elections next year. President Yoweri Museveni has instead, he did completely the opposite, and even introduced other ridiculous laws there that were not in tandem with that requirement by the Supreme Court, ruling there. So let's see how this court, of course, democracy is there, the rule of law. And I mean, police act there with impunity when you see the way they even handle the opposition leaders there, social justice and human rights standards. So these are things that that comprises this case against President Yoweri Museveni that was presented by lawyer Mabirizi Kiwanuka at the East African Court of Justice there in Arusha, Tanzania. And may I just add that even Tanzania itself, where that court is situated, refused to be one of the cases to be tried there. I think they refused to ratify a part of that law that allows their cases to go there. So I don't understand, if we have a court in your country and you don't want to be held accountable, I don't know what kind of thing is that. I don't think that's right. So Tanzania there under President Pombe Magufuli, who was doing quite a good job, but lately when you hear stories coming from there, then you realize Africa, we have a problem. So thank you so much. Remy Obama, you're saying, my sister, population of Uganda is now 46 million. All righty now, that's a lot of people. So if half of those people get tired, and maybe they just don't know how to articulate it, or they think about, if I go to protest in the streets of Kampala, the level of tear gas that will be sprayed on me, I may not be able to handle. But it comes a time where the push gets to the shove, and when people get tired and enough is enough, and you cannot stop an idea whose time has come, there will come such a time. In Uganda, there will come such a time. In other parts of Africa, whose leadership has refused to make sure that they serve their people. And Haji Chima, you're saying the only situation to Nigeria problem is division. Separate Biafra from Nigeria, the insecurity will stop. And who else? Odina Kachuku Onuka, your name is so long. Is it like a composite noun or what? And you're saying Zoology Republic of Nigeria is already at its comatose. Biafra is here. And Sami Green, you're saying Nigerian government has failed the black race around the world. Nigeria is a failed country. That is according to Obi Uche. And you're saying good morning from here. It is good afternoon. A matter of fact, 1:15 p.m. It is time for me to go. I will see you again tomorrow. Remember, nowadays we've changed the format, so it's not 1 whole 2 hours. The first hour, Good Morning Africa, we start with the Kenyan news, the news making headlines, and the local news story, and then we come back here at 12. Immediately after that, and then we look at other news making headlines in Africa through the Diaspora Dispatches. So remember, if you are watching us in the first link, normally we stop that and we start another one, because this is a whole totally different show where we now just focus on the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Miriam Agutu. It has been a pleasure to have you this afternoon. I hope to see you here again tomorrow for another edition of Diaspora Dispatches. Bye bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.